Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I am going to do something I haven't done in a while. I'm going to do a film review. We're going to talk about a film product that was released by Pixar, one of Disney's, not quite failing, but struggling studios. And they've been on the struggle bus for a long time. And mostly it's because of the politics and the messaging that they were inserting into films, with the exception of a couple that actually snuck through without a lot of that, including Inside Out 2, but of course they pulled that out at the last minute. You have been seeing a problem within the context of their storytelling that never existed there before. Going all the way back to Lasseter, from that point forward when he left the building, they have not been able to tell compelling stories, and that continues, unfortunately, in this film. And the reason that the thumbnail is what it is because, well, this film is as subtle as a cudgel. It aligns perfectly with things like Strange World and Buzz Lightyear and Elio. There's a lot of suffering in Disney animation of late, and unfortunately, we get to talk about it. Here we go. Now, before we get started, here's a real quick reminder. I'm trying to get to 50K, and the only way I can do that is with your support. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, you can check down below. And if that says subscribe, click the button and change it to subscribed. And then click on the bell icon and turn on all notifications. And with that all out of the way, let's just say this. There was nothing good or compelling about this film. If anything, it was slightly obscured messaging, an environmental messaging system that just kind of beat you over the head. And it had points where I saw that they could have gone in a good direction. And overall, it's relatively inoffensive, except for, well, all the mechanisms employed. They were still under the blind encouragement of DEI acceptance, which nobody really bought into. And of course, this was a female power messaging system right from the very beginning. And don't get me wrong, I like the anthropomorphized animals. I think that was all done well. The voice acting was incredible. The cast obviously worked very hard on this particular project, but the story itself, it wasn't one that needed to be told again. And that's the problem, is I feel like this is the same story over and over again with a few little tweaks that Pixar seemed to do a little bit better at, tugging at your heartstrings here and there. But for the most part, a lot of the criticism that I'm going to lay at its feet is because of the way the story was told. And look, I don't know the politics of anybody involved here, nor do I care. All I care about is this harmful for kids? No, not really, but I don't really expect them to enjoy it. I think girls rather than boys are probably the primary audience here, and I think that weaponized empathy is the mechanism to convey this message, and that's a problem. You keep pulling at that same cord and, well, it unravels over time, and people no longer are affected by it. It's the same thing that happens when you call somebody a name over and over and over again. The weight or the power of it is just not there anymore. And yes, this is an awful lot like, Over the Hedge. Not exactly, but it's very much like Avatar, even though during the course of the beginning of the film, they try very hard to tell you it's not Avatar. That's a not so covert way to, try to cover up the fact that it's basically a stolen story. In fact, it's very much like Ferngully or any of the other environmental tales that you suffered through when you were younger, or even as an adult. And again, it's not necessarily a bad film for any of the reasons other than what I'm talking about here, which is just plain lazy, bad storytelling and terrible writing when you could have conveyed a lot of the point you were trying to make without being so heavy-handed. And then I'm struck by the fact that I don't even know that this film should have been made. I look at something like this and I go, haven't we seen this before and done better? And when it comes to this particular film, I think so. And maybe that's the larger problem, is nobody cares anymore for this kind of, non-entertainment. And it always seems to come from what Hollywood would describe as marginalized people. Well, truthfully, all people are marginalized in some way, even the very most privileged amongst us. Does it show anything bad? Something that, kids, you'd be afraid to have kids watch? No. Does it teach a new lesson in a not so ham-fisted way? No. It's very ham-fisted, and at times I often think of the mayor character that's in this movie looking more and more like Gavin Newsom, only evil Gavin Newsom, which I guess if you look at it from a distance, he kind of is. And of course, the message of we all need to get along isn't a bad one. And, we need to follow the quote-unquote pond rules, which apply to everybody, including humans, not just the animals that are in this particular location. And look, I'm not going to spoil the storyline for you in case you want to go and see it for yourself. Why? I don't know. And as some people have told me in my audience, they enjoyed the film. And that's good. I'm not here to yuck your yum. If you enjoy something like this or it spoke to you, that's great. But just be prepared that it's about 90 minutes worth of wow, not another one. And that's really bad news for Pixar. And that's also the reason that I think that the studio doesn't expect this to do all that well. The opening doesn't look like a major box office performance. And there are reasons for that. Most importantly, because they understand the audience no longer wants things like this. They don't even want what's coming out in Toy Story 5, which I got a preview of, by the way, at this film. It doesn't look all that compelling, and it's a think piece about technology taking over for toys and creativity being replaced with, electronics and technology. And while that's an interesting story, I think I've seen it a few times, and I didn't think I needed this version of it. And of course, they make fun of Woody for a bald spot, which is played with, I'm sure, right from the very beginning of the film. But it looks as though I'm willing to talk as much about the trailers that I saw, which included the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer, as I am about this film itself. I didn't really end up liking the characters. There were a couple of animal characters I found interesting, but the lead character, Mabel, I just didn't enjoy because I know too many people in the real world that seem to act like that. And a lack of emotional maturity and some very skin-deep storytelling will kind of turn you off. At least that's my opinion. I'm curious what yours is. If you've seen this film, please let me know your opinion. If I were going to rate this, it would be a 2 out of 5 at best as far as a star rating. And if I were putting it on a 1 to 10 scale, I would say maybe it's a 4. 4 out of 10 is not very good. It's not going to get you into law school, but then again, maybe it might these days. I just hope that we get farther and farther away from lowest common denominator storytelling, and this film doesn't demonstrate that at all, which makes me a little bit concerned about more upcoming Disney sequels because things are starting to get tired. And maybe it's not the IPs, but the stories that are being told. And maybe that's the problem. Anyway, as I said, if you did see this movie and you found it different than I did, let me know in the comments section below. And if you are going to go and see this, try to go in with an open mind, but a clear understanding of what it is. And hopefully this review helped you make a decision about where you were going to spend your money this weekend. I think you'd be better off watching some higher quality films that you can probably purchase physically or digitally before ever going to the theater. And that's what's sad for me. I want people to go back to a theater experience. It's just maybe not for this one. Oh, and by the way, I did see this in 3D, and I don't think that helped at all. But as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. Just not seeing this movie again.